Hey, good morning, and thank you for joining us for this week's Innovate and Caffeinate. My name is Melanie Tapp. I'm with the Hopkins County Innovate and Caffeinate group, and today we are really excited to start this meeting off with a new community. So today I'd like to welcome Christian County Innovate and Caffeinate with us today. They are our host, and I'm going to lead it off to Kelly Pendleton, who is the president and CEO of the Christian County Chamber of Commerce. And the chamber has decided to join in with us. And so, Kelly, we're so glad that you're here, and we look forward to your event today.
Thank you so much, Melanie. We are so excited to be kicking off this amazing program. We appreciate all that you have done, and Tamala, we appreciate your help in getting us started virtually. We were going to do it in person, but that got pushed back. So we really appreciate the partnership with both Rest Kentucky Rise, Murray Callaway County, and of course, Hopkins County, EDC, and Kentucky Innovation Station. So thank you so much for that. I've got my caffeinate here, so I'm ready to go. And thank you for all that you've done. So we're excited to have our first episode of this, our first guest on the show. I'm really excited to introduce him. He is relatively new to our area, but has jumped right in and quickly become a part of this community and a good friend. So I'll tell you a little bit about him. Nigel Green, he is a consultant, author, and advisor who is widely regarded as the leading authority on building high-performing sales teams. With over 10 years of experience ranging from Fortune 500 companies to early-stage growth companies, he is sought after by executives to improve their selling efforts. He has worked with dozens of companies across the globe, including United Health Services, Ascension Healthcare, and Reload, to more than double their efforts. His insights have been featured in top publications, including Forbes magazine, Business Insider, and many others. He is the author of Revenue Harvest, and I've got the book here, a signed copy, and it's a great book. Check it out. It's Revenue Harvest, a sales leader's almanac for planning the perfect year, which we're all going to need a little bit of that this year, especially. He is a consultant and advisor. He helps companies with large goals overcome underperformance to create consistent revenue growth by utilizing his effective 7 sales leadership principles. Currently, Nigel is an advisor at the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center and is on the board of advisors for Reload, Cared For, Affirm Health, and Work It Health. So, Nigel, we're so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Melanie, for having me. If you listen to that bio, you may be thinking, none of this applies to me. I run a restaurant in middle of Kentucky. Well, one of my favorite business thought leaders is Peter Drucker, and he says the sole purpose of any business can be one statement, and that is to create a customer. And we're all in this business because we love what we do and we love our community, and our business can't thrive without creating customers. And this is a very challenging time for many companies to create customers. So what I'm going to share with you is real lessons that I've learned from real companies over the past number of weeks as they try to make sense of this COVID crisis and how they're going to get back to some state of normal. So I'm going to share with you, these examples range from healthcare companies to restaurants to really any sector, but I think you're going to find at least a few of these principles, hopefully all of them, to be helpful for you. So let me jump right in and share with you what we're learning. All right, so a little bit about my journey. I have worked primarily in healthcare, largely middle of the market. But I think what you're going to see here is that all these principles apply to you, because every one of these companies started a lot smaller, like maybe you might resonate and identify with yourself. Is this showing the right way, Kelly? Okay, good. Okay, so everybody's ready to get back to work, and we need to rethink the business because there's going to be so much that changes when we get back to work. So we're going to breeze through these really quickly. Don't worry about taking notes. Kelly's going to send this out afterwards. You're going to get this deck. So just pay attention, and you can go back. There's a lot of meat on each of the slides. I'm going to hit the highlights, and then what I think is a good thing for you to do afterwards is take these 10 principles, go back and do it with your team, and try to get a sense for how you're going to execute in this new normal. So the first one is identify and gather the right people. So think back to the past 6 to 12 weeks. There's going to be people on your team that have stepped up and really contributed to the business. Don't worry about title. Don't worry about tenure. What we're looking for are the things you can't teach, the things you can't coach. Find the people whose values and principles and their willingness to serve and go the extra mile. We want to keep them, and we want to celebrate that in this new era, and we want to figure out ways to incentivize, reward them, and get more from those people. But choose carefully. What we're learning is that you likely won't be able to retain everyone, and that's a harsh reality. So the second one is confirm that your target market is still viable. And I think this is probably one of the more important principles for me. All of your historic sales data, or your customer data, is no longer valid. Many of your target customers their needs have changed. They're no longer in business. So you're going to have to do the work to reassess how demand for your product or service has changed, what new and emerging product and service opportunities might exist for you, and are all of your distribution and go-to-market networks still intact? So you got to go back and do the work to understand how we went to market before all this, what's viable, what's not, where do we need to shift to maintain some sense of viability in this new world. Second is assess your customer sentiment. Okay, so you may be ready to get back to work, you may be ready to open up shop, but maybe your customers aren't. So, and that could be for a number of reasons. Maybe their pain points have shifted. Maybe they need you to address that they're going to be safe and secure when coming back to do business with you. So regaining the trust from your customers will take hard work, and you've got to invest time and resources into rebuilding the rapport and trust that you once had. Everyone's starting over on the trust cycle. Evaluate the competitive landscape. The inconvenient truth of this is that some of your competitors may actually emerge stronger from this whole situation, and maybe you can emerge stronger from this too. What you need to do is understand where the competitive landscape has moved, where your competitors weaker, or some competitors emerging stronger with a new market message that is resonating. So oftentimes it's the same product, but your competitors have just tweaked the positioning and the messaging a little bit, and that's creating some distinction in the marketplace. Maybe there's something that you can do. The other thing that you got to think about from the competitive landscape perspective is that some of them let really good people go. Is this an opportunity for you to go and get talent that you once may not have been able to access, but now you can? So think about all the ways in which the competitive landscape has changed and the ways that you can take advantage of it. The fifth one is identifying new opportunities. A lot of companies, a good example is they're now making masks. Telemedicine in my space in healthcare has been a shift that everyone has been racing to quickly adopt telemedicine. What are those examples for you? What are some new ways you might engage with your customers through technology? What are some adjacent spaces to your business that may be ripe for innovation? So a good thing to think about is go back to the customers that you had before this, that love you, that trust you. What else can you do for them? Are there other offerings? Are there other ways that you can serve them and help address some of their problems? And maybe that's an opportunity for you to emerge with some new ways to go forward. Sixth is evaluating your cash position. If you take anything away from this slide, figure out how quickly you can get to cash flow neutral and cash flow positive. What types of sales volume is required? Maybe you're going to have to open up with limited capacity. Maybe there's always going to be these restrictions and conditions about reopening. So understanding what your expense side needs to be so that you can very quickly get to a cash flow positives. If you took the PPP or if you took any of the disaster relief, only some of that's going to be forgivable. As many of you know, the guidance has been shifting and unclear. So the best thing you can do is increase your sales volume so that you're no longer dependent on those funds. Establishing a go-forward plan. Once you figure out what your cash position is, where your sales volume needs to be, and you have a good sense of what the conditions for reopening are, you've got to start putting a plan together. And a well thought out plan, it assigns your revenue and expenses down to the different offerings you have by month, by quarter, by week. The shorter the increments you can assign this plan, the better you're going to be, and the quicker and easier it's going to be for you to intervene when you're getting off course. So you've got to build a go forward plan. Just hoping that you're going to hit your number is not a very good strategy. You got to communicate with your team. Even though we're in this virtual world, I think the best thing you can do is over communicate. I tell my clients, no one ever left a company because of over communication. Be that leader that over communicates, and do it with a sense of humility and understanding that everyone's world is pretty much upside down. Number 9 is you got to show up and lead. Does your team trust you as the leader to do the right thing when considering all the stakeholders? Doing the right thing may not be the thing that they want you to do, but you've got to do the right thing, and you've got to act courageously. And it doesn't mean that you can't be courageous without having compassion. But you know better than anyone else what the business needs in order to operate in this new normal. And it's going to require some tough decisions. You've got to start making them now. And then the last one is execute. Once you decide, you got to move forward. And execution is the ability to mesh the strategy, the plan that we talked about, with reality, taking feedback from your customers, from the market, from your employees, and realigning the people, the processes, everything down to how you spend your money with the goal and achieve this new sense of reality going forward. So those are the 10 things, and I wanted to breeze through them really quickly because I'm hoping that it will provoke some questions and we can have a more targeted dialogue about how things are affecting you all.
Hey, Nigel, thank you so much. Those are great things for companies and businesses to be thinking about. I want to touch on a couple of points while we're waiting for any questions, but we did a evaluation, did a survey of our members, and some of the feedback, the concerns that they got, you definitely touched on. Regaining, the customer's trust. We think that everyone's just going to rush back out there. We're tired of being pinned up. We're going to run out there, but there is this big concern about a second wave of this or coming back. So do you have any advice on, can you elaborate a little bit more on what people need to be thinking about?
Well, people want to feel safe, right? So as eager as we are to get back to normal, in the back of our mind, we're wondering, are we creating unnecessary risk for ourselves or for others? So if you have an email, if you have your customer's email, now is a great time to start sending them. And it's not another COVID update, but this is our return. This is our plan. This is how we're going to keep you safe. If you have a physical property that people frequent, post it up. Let everyone understand that you are taking the necessary measures to help them feel safe and secure when they come to work, come to shop or to do business with you.
And you talked about new opportunities. I mean, it was great to see so many companies immediately start thinking in an innovative way and figuring out how they could offer, in a way that we've never seen before. Are you surprised, or is there anything you've seen out there that really surprised you, or did you kind of expect that to happen?
Well, I expected it to happen, but I didn't expect some of the pivots that I saw. I have seen, so for instance, I go to a boxing gym down in Clarksville, and boxing is obviously not something you can do during COVID because you're very close to each other. But to shift the membership into videos and distributing the videos via social media and email every day with workouts to keep you in training is probably one of the more thoughtful examples that I've seen locally, and it's working really well. They've actually opened up another building on Wilma Rudolph, so they're thriving.
Yeah, we have a local, one of our members teaches Taekwondo. My daughter takes from him, and it's amazing. He hasn't missed a beat. He does the lessons Zoom, and she takes them, and we pay him, and it's just as normal. We do have one question that's come in from someone curious as to how you got into this line of work, and what do you love about working with businesses?
Well, I tell you, this type of work, you don't find it, it finds you. And I don't know what the path is. I think it's probably just relentlessly committed to hitting a number. I mean, I've always been wired this way. I was a college athlete. There's always been a scoreboard in everything that I do. So it's a natural position for me to be in to help leaders create a scoreboard for their business. And what was the second part of that question?
Just what do you love about working with businesses?
Well, what I love about working with businesses is the people. I never have been someone that identified as an entrepreneur, but I just love founders and I love entrepreneurs, and I love that they are out to try to serve. At their heart, they're trying to change the world. And if I can help them with creating better scoreboard and better systems and strategies to create customers and change the world, that's a very fulfilling work for me.
We have another question come in. Do you have any advice for businesses on how to build a stronger team right now?
I do have advice. I hire people based on 3 C's, and competency is one of those C's, but it's the least important to me. Most companies and most hiring managers start with competency. I challenge you to start with character. Character is about, what are you doing when no one's looking? What are your values? Do you live a principled life? And you should be asking these types of questions in your interview now. What do you stand for? What's important to you? The second most important is chemistry. The reason that's important is you're going to spend just as much time with these people as you might your family, your loved ones, your significant other. It doesn't matter how competent they are. If you can't get along with them, it's not going to work. So make sure they have character. Make sure that you have good chemistry and rapport with them. If they have the chemistry that you're looking for, they're likely going to learn the competencies that you need them to learn quickly. So for instance, someone that's going to get along very well with me is a reader. Big surprise. So readers tend to pick up things very quickly. So if you hire for character, you have good chemistry, the competency is going to come.
I love that. And I love even that you touched on, evaluate your team right now. Who's been a solid teammate? Because you do that. I think that character comes through when times are tough. Who stood up and really helped during the tough times? We have another question. Can you speak from your perspective, the importance of cash flow projections, monitoring cash flow, and building cash reserves at this time? Any advice?
Yes. So you've got to think about your backlog of expenses, and you need to not rush to pay things. Exhaust your term limits with your vendors. And so if you've got 60-day terms, pay it on the 59th day. Cash is key in this time of life. The other thing is there's so many companies are cutting in the wrong areas. Okay. If you're keeping people, but you're not spending money on advertising, you're not thinking about it the right way. Customers are still buying. Why they're buying and what they're buying has shifted. You can't stop advertising. And by the way, advertising has never been as affordable and accessible as it is now, because so many of your competitors are thinking about it backwards and not spending. So that, because there's not as much demand and the supply for advertising is up, you can get into it cheaper, but you got to be smart and measure the return on those dollars spent. So for me, I'm doing doubling and tripling down on advertising because all of my other competitors are scared to spend money.
Well, that's a great transition to the next question, because someone's asking, what are you doing differently for your business at this time? Or are you getting a lot, different and more inquiries from businesses seeking help?
I am reaching out to different journalists that are writing to my customer, which is investors and entrepreneurs. And I'm helping the journalists think through concepts and ideas that they can share in their publications that are going to reach more investors and entrepreneurs. And that's really what I'm doing that's different. I spend about an hour a day engaging with different journalists from publications.
Yeah, we're all having to adjust a little bit differently. I know you and I both talked about, we've got kids, and I think everybody that's behind the scenes on this, we're talking this morning about that. And it is an adjustment. It's adjustment from that balance of we're all learning to we're having to think about the future and plans and cash flow at the same time, just adjusting to this new norm. So very different. Someone mentioned or has asked, should things continue to shut down, or if there were to be a second wave, are there things that people need to be thinking about now should this continue long range?
Yeah, so one of the 10 lessons learned that we talked about was a plan. And so good plans anticipate adversity. It's not a matter of if adversity is going to come, it's a matter of when. So as you think about your plan, it's probably prudent to expect that it's not going to go exactly the way that you want it to. Whether it's a second wave of COVID or it's something else, you will experience some disruption and some adversity in your business, and you need to plan for it. And so I think that's what I do is I have a separate account. I have two really. I have a 1% account. I take 1% of all revenue and I put it in this account. It just goes there. I don't touch it. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it. And then I have an opportunity account. And an opportunity account is more like, so think about the 1% account is defense. I'm saving money for a defensive perspective. The opportunity account is offense. And that's where I take a certain percentage of sales, put it in there for times like this when I need to double down and triple down on my sales and marketing. So I think that's one of the ways you can plan is pay yourself less and then put it in an offensive and defensive account.
One other question is, do you have any ideas of a general area of healthcare that you feel could be an opportunity for entrepreneurs right now?
Yes. So coordination of care is something that's very big in healthcare, and it affects every sector of healthcare. So for example, behavioral health is becoming we're becoming more aware of the consequences and the prevalence of behavioral health care. The reality is it's still very fragmented. You've got to go see a psychiatrist to prescribe medication. You may have to go see a therapist for a certain type of cognitive or emotional disorder, but there isn't a very good way to connect all of that with your physical health records when you go to see your doctor for your annual wellness visit, or if you have a pre-existing physical health condition. So the coordination of care right now is a very fragmented and disparate place. And so companies where I'm spending a lot of my time researching are companies that have the technology that connect all that care and coordinate it with all the different providers.
And I know that there's some people who would definitely would love to have some additional questions or conversation with you. And I'll just say we haven't worked out all the kinks yet, but we are working on a plan at our chamber, a partnership with Nigel, to bring him in to provide additional guidance and advice for companies. We were talking about this before COVID, but it just turns out that you may be needed now more than ever. So I'm looking forward to getting that going and bringing you in on board and doing more together to help our businesses during this time. We're about ready to wrap up. Is there any last words of wisdom you want to share with our viewers and our listeners?
You know, it's always darkest right before dawn. So just be mindful of that. Great.
Thank you so much, Nigel. We appreciate having you on. If you haven't had a chance, I'm going to grab the book. It's easy read. A lot of good information in there. Where can they get this book, Nigel?
Anywhere books are sold.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Order it online. Easy enough. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Nigel. We appreciate that. And I think we're going to go to some slides. Thank you again. We appreciate it. And just coming up, first of all, we want to say that if your community, we've got 3 now that are participating in Innovate and Caffeinate. Again, we're doing this virtually together, but at some point we will go back to our communities and be meeting in person and learning from each other. The point of this is to learn from each other. What better way to get advice from those who have been through it themselves. So we look forward to that. If you are interested in having your community participate, you can contact Melanie Tapp. You'll see her email down there, mtapp@West Central Kentucky or westcentralky.com. And next week we have a new speaker, and she's coming from Henderson. Her name is Jessica Bevan. She is from the home place of Henderson. So we look forward, she is an entrepreneur herself. So we look forward to having her on. And again, come join us this time next week, same time, same place, on your Facebook page, live, whether it's the Murray, the Hopkins County, or the Christian County, to view live next week at 8:30. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a great afternoon.